Okay, when we left off last week, I was able to finish siding both the left and the right side of the camper, and I had started siding up the front. And this is how far we got, so stay tuned. We're going to see if we can't finish siding the camper all the way around and maybe get it prepped for some paint. Alright, so I was able to finish the front, and you can see that as I'm going, I'm still painting all of the edges with the black paint. So at this point, I'm ready to start on the roof. Okay, so I've got the rear or the front of the roof where it folds down. That's all done, and I'm sizing up the second half of the roof here. I've got it laid across the top, and I'm gonna mark my edges, and then I'll be able to make my cut. Alright, so I've got that cut. It's laying on top of the roof. Here, before I attach it, I want to apply my carpenter's glue along each of the seams and on all of the supports. Then I'll lay that down and screw it into place. And you can see that clamp holding it onto the roof. The wind really started to pick up, so I grabbed a clamp, clamped it down really quick, and got down off the ladder. It didn't last very long. I was able to get back on. Okay, so you can see I've put on my last piece of siding, so at this point it is completely sided. So take a look inside the doorway, and you can look at the seams and see that there's no light coming through any of the seams, and it's the same all throughout the inside of the camper. So I think I've got a pretty good seal. And here's another shot from a little farther away. I've been painting all the edges and seams black as I go, and from here it looks like the camper caught fire and it's all burnt out, but that's just spray paint. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to do before I started climbing on top of the camper to paint it, I wanted to get the stabilizer jacks more stable. They don't go quite to the ground. They're about an inch off the ground. So I built these little chocks, and I looked for some of these online, and they were anywhere from $25 to $50. So I thought, well, I'll just grab some scrap cut-offs and glue and screw them together. So that's what I did here, and I just wanted to make it so that it was about anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to an inch above the top of the stabilizer jack when it's fully extended. And here I've got it under the stabilizer jack now, and I was able to put the jack all the way down and to really crank it down. So that made a huge difference. You get inside or on top of the camper and it doesn't budge, so that helped a lot. Okay, here I'm not sure how easy you're going to be able to see this, but I'm starting to fill all of the seams and the screw holes with exterior compound. And right here I'm just finishing up the roof. And this is the rear of the camper, just finishing up that rear seam and the screws across the top along the back side. Okay, so I was able to get all of my seams filled, and it's all sanded and prepped, ready for paint. So I moved the camper out onto the lawn because I didn't want to get paint all over the patio. More than likely I'm going to spill. And I went to the paint shop looking for recommendations. I told them that I was working with raw plywood, and they recommended this exterior grade primer called Gripper by Glidden. They said it was excellent, so I'm going to put a couple of coats of that on, and I'm going to follow that up with this Glidden Premium exterior grade house paint. This was also recommended by them, so I don't know how well this is going to hold up, but this is where I'm going to start, and if it holds up well, then that's what I'm going to stay with. And if it doesn't hold up, then I'll come up with a different material to seal the outside with. Okay, so I got 2 coats of primer on and 1 coat of the paint, and I didn't really like this color. It looked a lot better inside the store, but on the camper I'm not that crazy about it. So I went back and I got some samples of desert sand. And here you can see I painted the outline of one of the windows just to kind of see how that was going to look. And I dry fitted the window to see how it looked up against the black trim. And I really like that color, so that's what I'm going to go with. And I kind of took a poll with everybody, and it was pretty much unanimous to go with the desert sand. Here's the other window on the other side. It's a lot larger window. This is actually an egress window. It flips completely out, so if you have any reason to escape out of the camper through the window, this is the one you would take. Maybe a bear's coming in the door. I don't know. Alright, so here's just a shot further out of the window, dry fitted into the that side up against the desert sand paint. I think that's going to look pretty good. But before I paint, I actually wanted to put a rear bumper and bolt it onto the frame. So I grabbed a 2x8, cut it to width or length, which equals the width of the camper. And then I cut out on the bottom side so that I would have this thicker section in the center to hold a license plate. And I also measured up against the bolt holes so I could mark and drill those through. So this is all ready to be treated and painted. And I decided to treat this with a method called shusugi-ban. And that's a Japanese method of burning the wood. And what it does is it burns all the cellulose out of the wood, which is what attracts insects and is what burns easier. So it makes it insect proof, rot proof, not 100%, but it does a pretty good job. It's a nice, easy way to treat just regular pine, and it costs very little to do it this way. So here I am just using a regular propane torch, and I'm going to burn the outside pretty well, probably as much as you see there on the left. And I've got the bumper completely burned now, and I'm going to scrape it with a metal brush or a wire brush just to get all of the loose pieces off of the bumper. And then when that's done, I'll wipe it down with a damp cloth. Okay, so I got it all scraped and wiped and let it dry out, and I've given it a couple of coats of black paint. So at this point, I'm ready to mount my tail lights. So I marked out where the studs that come off of the taillights go, and they're not quite long enough to go through an 1.5 inch thick bumper. So I countersunk those about 3/4 of an inch, and I'll be able to throw a washer in there and get them bolted down pretty well. Also drilled a through hole for my wiring. Okay, so here I've got both my rear and tail lights mounted to the bumper. Got all my wiring in place. So at this point it's pretty much ready to install onto the camper, but before I install that, I want to get it all textured and painted. Okay, so here you can see I've started to texture the outside of the camper, and I do that, one, because it looks nice underneath paint, and it also does a nice job of hiding any imperfections or flaws that you might have. And here's a shot of the other side. Looks like I'm completely finished with all the texture, and I'm ready to start painting. Alright, so here I've got a couple of coats of the desert sand, and here's a complete side view. You can kind of see what that's going to look like. And I think this is going to look pretty nice once I get all of my black trim installed around the seams of the camper. So we'll take a couple more shots here. You can see the back side and the door side. Okay, so at this point it's ready to have the bumper installed. So I had to get everything lined up, run my bolts through, get it on, and get all my wiring in place. So everything's in place at this point. So that's what it looks like. I think it looks pretty good. Another shot here. And one more shot just to give you a little bit better look at that side window with all the tape removed. Alright, so that's as far as I was able to get this week. So stay tuned next for the next video, and we'll see where we go from there. But that's it for this week, so I'll talk to you guys later.